Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Success Stories podcast. I'm Jennifer Shuffle, your host, and today I am very blessed to have with me Tim Metzner. He is the founder and partner of Fire Road. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course, we're excited to hear your story. So, of course, today we're going to be talking about his business, his journey to business ownership, how he got to where he is, but of course, those challenges and best practices along the way. So, of course, if this is your first time to the show, make sure that you like and subscribe because we want you to get notifications whenever we have a new episode drop, just like this one. So you can come back, re-listen, and because we're going to have some really great tidbits that Tim's going to give us today. So, of course, Tim, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Definitely give us an insight as to what got you to where you are today and a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, happy to share and feel free to cut me off if I get long-winded. It's quite the journey. Let's see, it started in college. I was first generation college student and wasn't sure what that was going to look like, but I ended up getting a scholarship to University of Cincinnati to study business. So I got into a 5-year undergrad program. And it was 5 years because it required co-op, which was ended up being a pretty significant game changer for me. That just meant like after your freshman year of college, from there on out, like every other quarter, you were kind of getting a real job, so to speak. And this was really built, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the program was really built for kind of the future leaders of Kroger and Fifth Third and P&G and Great American. We've got some really amazing companies in the region, and they wanted to sort of build a pipeline, a feeder into those organizations. So many of my classmates in the program ended up doing co-ops there and ended up full time at those great companies. And I was interviewing at some of those companies as I approached my first co-op, and then I got introduced to a gentleman named Chris Downey who was his background was P&G. He was a University of Cincinnati grad, P&G in accounting, and then left P&G to start a startup in the late 90s called Up for Sale. Long story short, Up for Sale ended up being the second largest person-to-person auction site and got acquired by eBay right before they IPO'd. So in 2000, Chris was doing his earnout with eBay, and he was starting another startup on the side, and he decided to hire a co-op from UC to come, spin plates and help him get things moving. And so they hired a couple co-ops, and I ended up being one of those. And I joke all the time, like that first experience working in a startup completely ruined me from ever having a real job because it was just so exhilarating. Like the amount of responsibility and opportunity that was thrown at me as a clueless 19-year-old kid was just insane. Working for this like very mission-based organization with people who loved the work and loved each other was just such a thrilling environment. And I think it was also like I got to contrast that with some of my classmates' experiences. And no, I don't think most of them had a bad experience, but as they described sort of work at one of the big co's versus my experience, it was pretty stark difference. And I loved the environment. So I ended up working pretty close to full time, even a lot of the quarters I was in school for this startup. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey. So from there on out, I ended up starting multiple companies myself after working for that one for a few more years and really kind of immersing myself in this I call it like startup community building. Like it was this combination of an entrepreneurial passion and drive, and then also an awareness that there wasn't much going on here in Cincinnati in the early 2000s. It's like, well, what if we could start some things to help build momentum that selfishly might make it easier for me, but also will make it a better place for other founders to build, on in their own journey. And so have launched some nonprofit or a nonprofit around that and done a lot of mentoring and teaching and podcasts and angel investing and all kinds of stuff just to help stir the pot here of entrepreneurship. But also that has always been side hustle, and I've been sort of in the arena, man in the arena, building companies as well throughout that journey. So started
Yeah.
multiple different organizations that were ranged from sort of technology services to high tech venture backable that raised hundreds of millions of venture capital, and have seen a lot throughout that journey. So that's kind of the backstory, and there's a lot there. We could dig in anywhere there, but that was the backdrop to what I'm doing now, which is leading a venture fund. So at Firewood Ventures, we are investors who have been formerly operators, so we know what it's like to go from zero to one. We can
Yeah.
empathize with a founder in ways that, many investors can't, and we're willing to jump in at the super risky earliest stages, come alongside our founders and get them from idea and pitch deck and first product and first customer to something that might have a chance at scaling. So
Yeah.
writing checks as a VC today is kind of the day job.
I love that because here's the thing. When you start out and you have that first business that you start,
Yeah.
walk us through what are those emotions and what
Mm,
is it like to finally, okay, well, I have an FEIN. Now what?
sure. Yeah, what's an FEIN, right? That's the first. Why do where do I get this thing that people say I need? How do I
Sorry,
do
it's the
that? Like
accounting
that's
blood. You can't get it out.
uh, right. Like it's you're figuring all that out real time. And what's really cool is like I did have the advantage, and I recommend this to a lot of folks who are like interested in entrepreneurship or the startup environment, but they don't have an idea that's keeping them up at night. I just tell them like go work for an early stage founder. Because the amount of learning I got to do alongside someone who had been there and done that already, there was a really steep learning curve, and it was such a great experience. And you will hit a ceiling. There are certain things like what's an FEIN that you don't have to figure out if you're not the founder. Like there are those things that you have to be in the chair in order to have to learn and figure out and go. So I do think there's a great opportunity to learn from other founders. And I did, what hopefully your listeners are doing today, which is like listen to shows like this where I could learn from other
Yes,
people who, even if I didn't know them, I could borrow their knowledge, right? So I was doing a lot of
absolutely.
that, but also just being around an environment where you're working with folks who've been there and done that before and building your network. That was tremendous. So I think that backdrop teed me up to maybe have a slight advantage in starting the first company, which was called Differential. And I will say, even though I felt like I was prepared in a lot of ways, like it was still a pretty significant leap of faith. At the time we launched Differential, I'd gotten married and my wife and I'd had our first kid. And when I left, Spark People is the name of the first startup I worked for. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I felt like honestly, like I felt called by God. It was like time to step out. I'd been like thinking about starting a company, been dreaming about it, been talking about it, but just didn't feel like I had the right idea. And finally felt like the call was clear. It's like it's time to just step out and go, and you're gonna figure things out. So I put in my 2 weeks and left a perfectly good startup. I was in a VP role, doing great work, and felt like I enjoyed the people and all that good stuff, but felt like it was time to build and made that leap and found out very shortly after my wife was pregnant with number two. So it was like, all right, game on, here we go. So it was stressful, it was overwhelming. It was a you know great conversations with my wife, who was incredibly supportive. And I will say, like, I'll never forget, when we had that first conversation, she said something to the effect of, just promise me if in 6 months you haven't figured out what you're doing, you'll go get a big boy job. And to her credit, I definitely didn't have it figured out in 6 months, and she never brought that conversation back up. So
Oh, that's
that was the
amazing.
early journey. It was like, honestly, I made the leap. I had like one side hustle consulting project I was doing when I left, and I like was able to add on a couple more because I had a good network of founders, and I had this skill at the time, which was like I knew how to do kind of customer acquisition for early stage companies. So if you're trying to get your first early customers, and at the time,
Mhm.
this is dating me, it was like pre-social media, you're like figuring out how do we do AdWords and how do we do all these other different like SEM and SEO strategies. I was pretty well versed in that. So I got some consulting work right away to help pay the bills, which gave me some time and space to eventually launch Differential, that company that would come together, and would end up starting that with a friend who shared a similar vision for like the someday company we wanted to launch, which we would have described at the time as like a movie studio, but for startups. It's like, why not just give this thing a shot? Like, let's see if we can build this. So that was the
Nice.
early days.
So, how many businesses have you now started at this point?
It seems like a straightforward question, but I wrestle with this all the time. And here's why I say that. So, Differential was the first company. Well, actually, there was a side hustle startup I did while I was at Spark People that we ended up shutting down. So that was a failure.
Okay.
Differential was the first kind of proper going all in, quit my job, and this is the company I'm going to build. But when we launched Differential, we did so with the intent of launching other companies. So out of Differential spun multiple other companies that I sort of
Yeah.
helped launch. I wasn't like full-time founder and driving, but we helped incubate and spin out of the lab, so to speak. And then I also started an accelerator called Ocean here in Cincinnati in 2014. We had our first accelerator class. And so, that first class, we had 10 companies go through that journey and we meet them at the inception stage essentially. And so we spun out 60 to 70 companies over 10 years out of that accelerator. Again, I'm not a founder of those technically, but spent a lot of time helping to incubate those and launch the accelerator, which launched the companies. So that's, a little bit
Yeah.
of kind of a crazy thing. Then I started Coterie Insurance, which was a venture-backed insurance company, and now Fire Road, which has a couple different operating principles and disciplines we're looking at. So, 4 to 5 maybe is like the
That's what
right
I was going to
answer,
say.
but
Yeah.
there's some baby seedlings that came out of all those activities as well.
Right. Right. So once some of these businesses have launched, how many of them may come back and be like, hey, Tim, can you help me with this? Can you help me think through this? Has that ever happened?
That happens actively as a mentor in general, right? Like even for companies I haven't founded, I do serve as a mentor to a lot of folks, and now certainly at FireRoad as an investor, that's part of what we do, right? We add value to our portfolio, and
Correct.
some of our founders we're talking to weekly, and some of them might be a couple times a month, so it kind of depends on them. Of the companies I've founded, I'm still on the board of Differential. So the first company I started, I sold a lot of my equity and I stepped out of day to day, but I've maintained my board seat, and so I help those guys as often as I can and as is needed. Coterie Insurance, I still have all my equity there, and I spend time with my co-founder, who's still CEO of that company, every month, but I'm not actively helping solve problems.
Right.
Available to anyone there to call, and occasionally I'll get a call from someone, but it's not super involved. So those would be the big ones, and then certainly the portfolio. I love spending time with our founders.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and when you have this passion and this dream, it's not like you ever really graduate, because there's a piece of you that's attached to it too, especially when
That's
you've
right.
started it.
Yeah,
So with
no
Fire
doubt.
Road, how many employees are there now?
There's just two of us. So we've had a few different partners. We've been around 3 years, and we've had some part-time folks help along the way. We've actually launched a couple people out of the lab, so to speak, already. So we are now just two of us full-time running kind of the venture fund.
And for this business, how did you actually acquire this business and how did this one come up?
Fire Road started because it's something I've thought about for a long time. Like I've raised capital from VCs for a lot of my career, and so I've been on the other side of the table. And a couple of the observations that just kept coming back to me throughout that journey was like, number one, there's not very many of them in our region. In Cincinnati, certainly, but in the Midwest broadly, there's not that many early stage, pre-seed is where we invest. There's not that many options at the pre-seed stage for founders in our region. The second part of that was like there's even fewer options with being run by folks who've been in the founder chair. And my favorite investors I've worked with were always founders first. Not to say you can't be a great investor if you weren't, but the amount of sort of landmines other investors helped me avoid and my co-founders avoid along the way because they had been in our seat was just immense. And the ability for them to empathize with the journey and to meet us kind of where we are as we continue to scale. It's like, yep, I've seen this phase before. So let me talk about what's coming next, right? Is really incredibly helpful. So I wanted to be one of those investors, like someone who had actually been in the operator chair, was the second kind of big aha. And then, we got really excited about this thesis, realized like there was almost no investors focused on SMB technology. So a lot of venture, in fact, less than 3% of all venture gets invested into companies building solutions for SMB America. That is crazy because almost 45% of all technology and IT spend in America is done by small businesses. So you've got this
Right.
massive market of that collectively is spending almost half of all spend, and
Mm.
yet only 3% of VCs are interested in backing founders building technology for these companies. And we're like, there's a huge gap that we want to step into, and we want to come alongside these founders, not just because it's a gap, we have a heart for small business America. We believe like small businesses are still the backbone of this country, and yet they're
Absolutely.
kind of getting the VC leftovers. It's like whatever was built for enterprise customers out of Silicon Valley. They try and retrofit into working for these like SMBs in most cases, and like that's just crazy. And we think there's a better way to do it. So that's why we started. So that was kind of the backdrop for launching Fire Road Ventures. We launched a
So
$5
really
million,
quick, Tim,
dollar, yeah,
because you use the acronym SMB, just so that
yes.
then everybody knows what is that? Like, what does that stand for?
Yeah, small and mid-sized businesses is, it's a pretty generic term, but it's not your Fortune 500 enterprise, and it's more closely aligned with like the companies you'd see if you drive through the average main street in America. It's retail, it's services, it's trades, it's manufacturing, it's the kind of
Right.
jobs that are still powering our local communities across this country.
Mhm.
And one of the things we find increasingly important about this category is like these are also the jobs that are probably not going to get disrupted by AI. Like these are the kind of businesses we're still going to need local human presence. We're going to need boots
Yes.
on the ground, turning the knobs and scaling these companies. Like we want to tech enable them so they can scale even more and create more of these great jobs in our region. So that's how we think about SMB.
Yes. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure
You
that
got it.
everybody understood what you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah, good catch. So that's the focus. We launched a first fund. So as a venture investor, the 101 is like we go get other people to give us money so that we can use their money to invest in startups that we find. We put some of our
Right.
own money in as well, of course. So we raised a $5 million first fund that we're investing out of now at Fire Road Ventures. We've done 31 deals and just approved another one. So, we'll have done just over 30 investments out of Fund One. We'll do two or three more out of that first $5 million fund. And now we are simultaneously raising our second fund to continue this good work. And, one of the cool things we found is finding great companies is not the challenge. Raising a fund is not easy. It's really hard work to raise capital to deploy. However, once you have that capital, finding great startup founders, focused on this world of SMB technology, it's pretty easy because there's just not that many of us out there who will invest in this category. So it's been fun to get to find and interact with and invest in some great founders.
So it sounds like there's two opportunities. One, those to get funded, but then also people to fund future of America. Let's
That's
just
a
call it
that's a
what it
great
is.
summary of our work. Yeah, we
Yeah.
are out there hunting for the next great founders building technology companies. And if that's you, check out fireroad.io. You can go to our website and learn more about who we are, and even there's a apply there button. So if you feel like you're a fit, hit the apply, and we read all those from founders. And then, yeah, we're always looking for folks who can back, who come alongside our vision and provide capital so that we can be the investor we want to be. In particular, one of the things we love doing is building relationships with business owners. Like these are great contacts for us. As I said, we're building because we have a heart for these owners anyway.
Yeah.
It behooves us to have a great network of business owners out there so that we can run ideas by them. We can learn from them. What are the problems you're having that we should go find solutions to, right? Like we're going to go meet the founders solving problems for your business. Tell me more about the kind of businesses you're having as you scale this thing. Like what would it look
Hmm.
like to make this better? So that's a great feeder for us. And then as we meet these founders, we can introduce them to this network of owners and go like, hey, Jen, you're running a company that I think would be a fit for this business. Like, would you spend time with this founder and tell me, like, is this a problem that you would pay money to solve? Like, will you give them feedback? Will you give me feedback? It helps me become a better investor. It helps me to be more helpful to our portfolio if I can help introduce them to potential customers, right? And we
Yes.
just get better informed as part of the process. So we love the idea of more people kind of coming around Side Fire Road as owners and jumping into what we're doing.
Well, and as business coaches, we also help businesses to really thrive and to go to that whole next level as well. And to be that personal board of directors,
Yes.
especially once they've launched, so that then the focus for you and the team can be funding and more things. But then I'm meeting with them maybe weekly.
Yeah.
So really getting these SMBs to a whole nother level is a true passion. And it does, it
Yeah,
builds our community. Absolutely. So, where
it
do you
does.
see Fire Road 5 years from now? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, I would say Look, if we're successful, I think number one, you'll see a lot of copycats in the form. I just think you'll see more capital focused on the category. Like there is this huge gap that, we're only a small sliver of solving the problem. Like I think it'd
Hmm.
be good for our country if there were more VCs focused on this world. And so I think we will see more of that, whether it's funds like ours exclusively focused on it, or it's, larger funds starting to do more of this type of investing, which actually we're already seeing the beginnings of. I think you'll see more investors out there focused on talking about, writing about, looking for founders in the category. For us, in 5 years, I think we will have our first two funds will be, almost entirely deployed, and
Right.
hopefully we're on the cusp of some exits and some nice returns for our investors. And we've come alongside founders who are changing the game. Like they've changed some categories like significantly for some of these SMBs that we come alongside. I think there's a pretty good chance at that point we're working on or have already raised our third fund to do more of this kind of investing and activity.
Cool.
And I would add, like, there's a pretty good chance we've launched a couple other initiatives. Like, I'm a builder at heart. Like, Fire Road at some point is probably not just going to invest. We'll probably build. We'll come alongside builders and actually co-found some companies. So, in 5 years, I'd be surprised if we hadn't launched anything out of the lab, so to speak, ourselves. And the long-term vision may or may not come in this timeline, but I hope it does. Is we also want to be owners of these SMBs. Like we believe we can
There
both
you
tech
go.
enable them through the venture fund and eventually build a long-term holding company where we become sort of like an alternative to private equity, where we can go like, hey, if it's time to sell your business, you can go get the highest dollar from PE on the coast, and that could be a win for a lot of people. It could also jeopardize the culture you've built and how you care about your employees and your customers. And so
Right.
right now, the primary options for small business owners are you get large enough that you sell to private equity and you sort of ride off into the sunset and you deal with the consequences of that, which may not be a bad thing, but it could be. Or you eventually just flip the lights off. And there's some who are lucky enough to have like a next generation, usually a family member kind of step in.
Yes.
Or maybe you've had a key employee come alongside you and you can hand over the reins. That's pretty rare though. So we think like this idea of building another type of holding company where we are long-term permanent capital is just like we want to hold this business and help you scale it for as long as possible. And when you're ready to ride off into the sunset, we'll still be here for continuity reasons and we'll help bring in that next wave of leaders. So we don't plan to like buy and operate. We plan to buy and come alongside owners and partner with them and eventually help them transition out when the timing is right. But that's the other part of the fire vision that we're not working on aggressively yet, but in 5 years, I hope we'll have a story there.
That is so super powerful, especially as I'm talking to businesses about scaling and then being ready to sell. And those that have also had that key employee, but maybe it's not panning out to what we thought it was going to be. So,
Yes.
this is definitely something that I am going to take away for sure. So, what does it mean to you personally? And what has this really allowed you to do in your own personal life by having fire roads?
Man, I think it's sort of a long-term vision fulfilled of like moving over into being a really value-add investor who's like excited to roll up my sleeves and help our founders. Um, I think the other part of the Fire Road story we didn't really talk about is in addition to being like helpful and hands-on, like we also just care about the human. And again, it doesn't seem like it should be a differentiator, but sadly in the venture world, like it is rare.
Very much it
Founders
is.
are caught off guard all the time and I go like, "Hey, thanks for the update. How are you? Like, how are you doing? How are you sleeping? How's your marriage? How's your relationship with your friend?" Like, when I ask them
Yes.
about the human being, it's a little startling that they're caught off guard by that. Because I'm like, well, why wouldn't more of your partners be doing that work? So I find that just incredibly fulfilling because, again, I've been in that chair and I know there are so many times when the world's like, "Hey, you're crushing it. You're doing awesome. Well done. This is amazing. Like, you guys are raising capital. You're adding to the team. You got cut." Like, and you're like, "Yeah, thanks. This is great." And then, internally you're like, "I don't know what the frick I'm doing. Like, I feel like an imposter. Like, I don't know how we're holding this all together. It's only by the grace of God." I'm like, you're kind of
Yes.
like imploding, right? And so to
Yeah.
have folks who can spend time with founders and do that like real founder therapy and go like, hey, let's not just it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I know better. I've been there. Like, let's talk about the real. Like, what are you struggling with? Let's spend time there. I can
Good.
read the highlight reel in your investor deck, but I want to know about like the storm. And I just
Yes.
find that really rewarding to get to do that. And I'm sure you as a coach find yourself in a very similar position regularly.
Yes. Well, and I'm so incredibly like happy that you do that because if you're not right here, the business will never be right.
It's not. That's right.
So
Yeah.
you have to check in with yourself, with others, because this world, yeah, it might be dog eat dog, but it's rough.
Yeah.
And all that people want to generally look at is the highlight reel.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, that business came up overnight. No, this person's been at it for
Yeah.
years on end.
Quietly suffering.
Yes, yes. And it does, it can take a toll on you very slowly or quickly, too. So, what does your exit strategy look like, though, from Fire Road? Like, we always talk about
Yeah.
what's the end in sight when you get
I
started. Like, what does the end look like?
I mean, never say never, but you know, I've tried both for myself and as a promise to my wife to build this in such a way that it can be the forever organization. That's why we've got this long-term vision of buying, building, and investing. It's like those are all the ways I envision spending kind of the rest of my career. And you know, I'm only in my mid 40s. I've got a ton of energy and you know, plenty of runway ahead, but I
Yeah.
feel like having this platform gives us the ability to, you know, zig and zag with where changes of in the economy and technology are going. And, you know, if this thing looks exactly the same in 15 years, I'd be shocked. But, you know, that's sort of
Mm,
how I'm wired is to continue to adapt. And we've really built Fire Road to be this long-term, you know, flexible engine where we can do a lot of things under one roof and hopefully that it just continues to accrue a lot of value to our shareholders. And to our
yes.
partners and to all the startups and founders we're working with and business owners.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Unfortunately, we're starting to come to the end. So we do have a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you
Okay,
ready?
let's go.
Awesome. What is the key to success for you?
Defining success on the right terms. I think early in my career, I was chasing the dollar. I was chasing the dream of like build a company so I could
Mm,
have a bunch of money and then you would be successful, quote unquote, and you could do cool things. Like instead, over the last, you know, second part of my career, let's say, I've, you know, really come to believe that God has put me on this earth to build his kingdom and to use entrepreneurship to do that. And so that's the lens I use to evaluate all the things. And, you know, that can't just be outside of the walls of my home. It has to be at home as well, building into my kids and my wife. So yeah, I define it as like a really full, busy schedule that is rewarding and fulfilling both professionally and personally. And I actually think we talk about like work life balance a lot. I actually believe if you're feeling tension, it's a really good. I feel incredibly blessed that I love my family so much that I hate being away from them. And I
yes.
love my work so much that I never want to stop doing it. Like that is a tension that like the fact that both of those things are true, like I would say like, man, I'm a rich man already.
Yes. Well, and to your point, as far as defining success, it can change too the older we get. And
Yes.
our rituals also changes as we age and just start to
For sure.
realize a couple of things too along the way.
Yeah.
What is your one piece of advice that you would give to other business owners?
Don't do it alone. I like being around a community of other business owners and founders has been the thing that's probably kept me, you know, other than maybe I'll say like my faith number one has been the thing. So like leaning into that on a consistent basis. And then my wife and family around me has been the obviously incredible support structure. But for more than a decade, I've spent weekly time with other founders who are building into me and we're building into each other. And you
Yes.
know, I can't tell you the number of not just like problems we've solved, but just conversations I've gotten to process in a way that otherwise would just be up here for way too long. And my wife's amazing and I love her, but some of the things I want to process, she just doesn't have words for or an understanding of because she's not a founder. She hasn't been in that seat. So um, don't do it alone. Build a community, build a tribe of other founders you're doing it with will be like one of the most important investments you make.
Yeah, it is fun. And congratulations for having such a huge support network at home too,
Yeah, thank you. It means a lot.
because
It really
that's
does.
very
Like it's
instrumental.
underrated, honestly. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What is a book or podcast that you're reading or listening to right now?
I've been working my way through actually sitting here the greatest story ever told. It is by Bear Grylls, the like classic outdoor adventure dude who's done like all the survival shows, was kind of the creator of the category.
Yeah.
He wrote this book and it's just like a cool it's basically like the telling of the Bible, but done from a series of firsthand accounts. So it's like written
Mm,
in the eyes of Peter and the eyes of Jesus's mom. And so like it goes through the story in a very different and unique way that's just been really fascinating. It's not a long read, but I've been taking a long time on it just because it's been really like piquing my curiosity. So that was a good one.
that's cool. All right. So here's a fun question. If you had a little bit of magic dust that you could sprinkle on any part of the business, what would it be?
Fundraising. Fundraising is the hardest part of the job, and it's not that I don't enjoy it, but it is a grind. Like you're just constantly, pitching the vision, which that's the fun part is like talking about what we're doing is energizing to me. But man, I would much rather be spending time with my portfolio companies and finding more great investments than spending time fundraising. So if I could just have the easy button for any part of it, like make fundraising go really fast and let us get back to the important work.
I love it. So before we get into the final question of the day, Tim, how can people get a hold of you, get in contact with you? I know you mentioned the website, but share with our audience, how can they really get in touch with you and follow you?
Sure. Yeah, fireroad.io is the website again. LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. Just search for Tim Metzner and Fire Road. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active there. I write a free daily newsletter. It's just like a booster shot for founders. It's called Daily Mo. If you go to dailymo.co, you can sign up for free and you'll get just like a really quick, brief thing every morning. It's meant to be
Nice.
an encouragement to keep you going. And I won't talk about the name yet, but I'll soon be announcing a podcast that I'm taking over, and I've got a couple episodes recorded I'm excited about. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see the announcements of that coming soon.
Excellent. I look forward to that then.
Yeah.
All right. So we've come to the final question of the day.
Okay.
What is most inspiring to you today?
What is most inspiring to me? I mean, I keep coming back to it, but my faith walk is the thing that keeps me like it humbles me in the highs and it keeps me steady in the lows. Like when I don't know what to do, I get on my knees and pray. When things are going well, I praise God for the blessing. So that continues to be an inspiration, and doing that with my wife is a huge inspiration. So she's, even though she's not a founder, she's just as stressed and busy and chaotic as I am, and so like leaning into that together, I think is a huge inspiration. And then the last piece is just like our founders. I mean, for anyone who's had the benefit of getting to spend time with someone who is super passionate about solving a problem in the world, like I get to do that all the time. I get to meet people who are like, I'm going all in, I'm risking it all, I'm burning the ships behind me, and I'm going all in to solve this problem that I can't stop thinking about. And you can't help but be inspired when you spend time with folks like that.
Yes. The innovation is just so neat. And when you see that twinkle in people's eyes, it's so empowering
Yeah,
and completely, totally agree.
yeah,
And yes, having faith not only in yourself, but reflecting in gratitude, it will carry you through some really, really hard times because it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your story and sharing with us today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of
Of
fun. I
course.
appreciate the questions.